Hi, good evening and welcome. My name is Justin Continicolau and I am the Young Adult Librarian at the Ridgewood Public Library. This evening, I have the pleasure of introducing Noble Class Academy. Justin Kim is the Executive Director, and tonight, along with his colleague Harrison Cho, they will be introducing information on understanding the SAT test. I turn it over to you, Justin.
Hi, how are you? Okay, thank you for your time, Justin. All right, my name is Justin Kim. It's good to be back. It's always my great pleasure to serve and make contribution to Ridgewood community. Today, we're going to be talking about, the SAT test and the change towards the digital SAT test format. So I have my colleague and co-director, Harrison Cho. Hi, Harrison. Thank you for your time today.
Hello. Hi, everyone. How are you?
Hey, please. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Harrison Cho. I currently am a teacher at Noble Class in Midland Park. I've been teaching SATs and ACT standardized tests basically for the past, I don't want to say it, but like 22, 23 years, about 20 years or so, give or take. And then there are some things that I always share with my students to help them understand the mechanics that a lot of people seem to kind of not be aware of. And I just take today's chance to kind of share what I usually share with my students. So the title says an understanding SAT test, but it's actually a standardized test, really. So it's more of the SATs and ACTs in general to get into colleges. Next, please. So the first thing I wanted to mention is the purpose. Like, why are you guys doing this to me? Why do I have to say, is the schoolwork already hard enough? Why do I have to do this? If anything, it's actually beneficial to schools like, say, Ridgewood, because standardized test means that there are the other criteria for colleges to evaluate a student's performance is GPA. But when you go to a very rigorous, a school with a very rigorous curriculum where, a lot of homework, the tests are hard, your A in AP chemistry or, your A in whatever pre-calculus, it's not necessarily the same A in some other school where the expectation is lower and the competition is less. So like the kind of test that what they want to see out of you is something that actually goes through, supersedes the distinct characteristic of each schools and each teacher too. So that's what they're trying to do. And second thing, next please. The second thing, in order to do that, how do we standardize? So it's standardized in case of the score. So it is very, very important that you understand whether you're parents with certain expectation to say like, okay, is this good score, bad score? Or from your student's point of view, as in like, what is the goal I want to hit? You need to understand how the score is made, because the scoring system of standardized test is quite different from most of the scoring that you get to see inside your school. Even private schools, they don't usually do something like that because it's a statistical model. Next, please. So let me first explain to you. I know it's about to get boring. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm the teacher. I just can't help it. This is this is what I do. So here we go. I call it bell curve. Probably, maybe many of you heard of it. Also, it's called normal distribution curve. So what they're trying to do, looks like that. Oh, my, okay. So yeah, forget about all these like little, oh my God, graph, man, why again? All right, it's actually useful. This one is useful. So what it is the score of SATs out of 1,600, ACTs out of 36. But the point you get, the 10-point increment of SAT, or 1-point increment of ACT, they are not telling you how many questions you got wrong. That's the thing. that point, your score, the score you get represents how far away you are from the average. So if you look at the bell curve, right, normal distribution curve, this curve represents a typical distribution of any group of people or entities or a population. If you look at the center, you see at the bottom it says 0. That number is the average of everyone in this group. So in case of, say, SAT, we're looking at like 1,050. 1,050 is average score of like everyone who takes a test. That's 0. To the right side, you see the 1 sigma. So the sigma is a standard deviation length. So you have a 1 sigma length, and that means certain number away. So let's say it's like 180 for SAT, 180 point higher than the average, which is like 1050. I actually have these numbers down on the next slide. But when you actually get 180 point more, that means you just became a person who's better than 34.1%. You see at 31.1%? There are 34.1% of the population have scores between the average and 180 points higher. 34.1% live there. 1050, which is average, and you go down 180 points, then that's also about 34% live there. So the score that you get is a representation of what percentage of people are ahead of you and behind you. So you see now, that's why the curve matters per test, because that's why you get multiple tests. And then sometimes you get students who got, I don't know, about 1 wrong in math, and they take off 20 points in SAT. Sometimes you get 1 wrong, you get 0 points off. You still get perfect score. Why? Because the score itself is supposed to represent your percentile. So in this graph, you see that 3 sigma away, you said 0.1%. That means that once you hit that number, which is about 1540-ish, 1570-ish, you are 1 out of 1,000. You're the first person out of 1,000. You have the highest score. So when the test is hard, there are not that many people who get everything right. So even when you get 1 wrong, you still fall within that 0.1%. And that percentile is correlated to your score, like say 1,600. So it's not necessarily the number of questions you get wrong. Your score is how much did you do better compared to everyone else who's taking the test, right? Okay, so let's next slide, please. So given this, we have this quite interesting characteristic of SAT scoring. Since they are doing some scoring of the statistics and not really how many questions you got wrong, there's a margin of error. Margin of error means that your score, when you have like certain 1,500, that does not necessarily correlate exactly to like you are, like 95.22% of the population. Now, every population is a little different because it could be a year where everyone's just so smart. It could be a year everyone's a little less smart. Maybe the month that you took the test happens to be the ones that all the smart ones got sick. Maybe they drank too much, I don't know, Red Bulls to stay up all night long to study. Whatever it is, there's a margin of error. So to actually say that I have 1500, what you're actually saying is that my actual score is somewhere between 1480 and 1520. It's a margin of error. You know? So it's in between. What is the consequence of this? It's quite interesting how people are so like about that 100th number, like 1500. I want to hit 1500. I mean, I know it's just quite satisfying. So it's quite satisfying to like hit that 5, you know, new digit on the 100th. Or like I want to hit the 1400. It's quite not really, because 1480 and 1520, they're actually about same score statistically, and that's what the college want to see. They want to see your capacity in terms of percentile, right? So first takeaway from this is don't be so discouraged that as if you miss your target score just because you got 1490, you know, because you didn't hit 1500. It's safe. So what is that good score? Like, what are we trying to get? Our goal is trying to get to the higher standard deviation away. So I told you it was on 80 for SAT, right? So if you are 3 standard deviation away, as in like 540 points standard deviation away from the average, which is about 1050, that number changes every year, then now we are at 1600, right? Because the perfect score is meant to say that this student is 1 out of 1,000. Average ACT score is 18. You know, much lower than, because in Richmond, I would imagine in Ridgewood, everyone's like, what? Who gets 18? That's what? No, the national average is 18. National average SAT is 1050. 3 standard deviation away, that's 18 more points because 6 points per standard deviation. Now we are at 36. So I want I want everyone to think in terms of when you're setting up your goal, I want you to think in terms of how many standard deviations away that I want to get to. Right? And then with the margin of error about 40. And then 30 per section for SAT, something like 740 to 760, about same number out of 800. Now, to be more like a practical goal, 1400 is an example. If you are hitting 1400, you're already at top 5% of everyone who's taking the test. So it's actually a very, very good score. And then 1480 and 1520 equivalent. But there's a caveat. There is actually something that I didn't put on here. There's a little exception case when we are looking at these numbers. Let's say that 1400 is top 5%. True. 1480 and 1520 are equivalent. Got it. However, if you were to, we're talking about SAT here, right? Because ACT is out of 36. I'm using SAT as an example because numbers are bigger, it's easier to understand, in my opinion. Let's say that 1480, which is broken up into the English reading portion and the math portion, right? They combine 2 scores together, each one 800 worth, and they put together to make 600. But if you got 1480, because in reading writing section, you got 700, and math section, you're at 780, if that's how you got 1480, versus you got 740 in reading writing and 740 in math, right? Evened out. you can kind of see what the implication is. Because of that margin of error, about 30 points, your 740 in reading can still be worth 770, like 30 points higher, right? If you're someone who's capable of getting like something like 740 in reading writing, the understanding is you're capable of getting 770. And your math 740, also same thing. So if we're looking at the higher end, like what you're capable of potentially, 747, 740 can also mean up to 770, 770. But if you are at 780 math, and your highest you can go is obviously 800, and your 700 can go up, you see what I mean? Once you're reading a 700 is standard deviation away, is too close to the average. So your potential is not that high, even if we take into account the margin of error. So if you are someone, so this is a common mistake I see in my students. They're so, in a way, obsessed with the number 1500 or so, that when they get 700 in reading and then 800 in math, they think it's same as 750 in reading, writing, and 750 in math. So if I were to advise someone, hey, Harrison, look at my score. Look, good. I'm like, good job. Of course, that first. Should I take this again? I got like 1510, but then the breakdown was 710 and 800. I'm like, you know, I mean, yeah, I think you can do a little better in, you know, reading, writing section. Or, hey, I got like 1520, but I got 760, 760, even break. You know what? I think that's terrific. You have zero need. Just that's great. That's a great number. Unless like you're very, very confident that you can do better than 760. Like obviously better than 760 is now we are at this point we're hitting 800 or so. Yeah, no need. So this is why I wanted to talk about this first. I know this is kind of boring old numbers and math and statistics, percentage, but this is a question I get most often from my students, like, why stop? Answer was, what percentage do you want to hit? Because obviously if you are trying to hit the top 1% of a college, that's the number you want to hit. If you're shooting at top 5% of the college, well, there's your number. So you want to set your goal, and then in understanding your score is also here, what each one means. All right, next, please. This one is not too different because I get asked this question a lot. So let me just go through this slides very quickly. Next, please. How are SATs and ACTs different? All right, it's a lot of writing here, but I'm going to make it very simple. The reading section of SAT is your filtering, extracting, applying relevant information fast. They're all fast because you have a time limit, right? Your job is to filter. There are a lot of information that you don't need to answer the question. Your job is to filter them out. ACT reading, you have to remember a lot. Because they're going to ask you questions such as, here is a long reading that's going to take you like whole entire 3 minutes. It's like it is 10 paragraphs. Which of the following is the second thing that happened, you know, in time, you know, chronologically, which is the second thing that happened? Like, huh? And of course, the 10 paragraphs are not in chronological order. It's like, huh? So you have to remember a lot. That'll be a reading. Math-wise, SAT math, yes, they're mean. We'll talk about it a little more later, but their goal is not really to test your mathematical knowledge. I know, if you're a student, you'd be like, what do you mean? You know, they are so hard. I don't know what to do. No, if I were to look at your transcript, you're probably in like honors math or something. Even if you're regular math, if you're like a freshman, even if you're a freshman, you have done harder questions when you're 7th grade. when you were just first learning about slopes, x-intercept and y-intercept? Because I kid you not, the biggest chunk of SAT math is on slope and x-intercept and y-intercept linear functions. It's not about how well you know the topic. It's the way the question is designed and written. As for ACT math, you just need to know more because it covers like up to pre-cal, a little bit more of that stuff, a little more of the trigonometry, and then polynomial functions of a higher degrees. That's more frequent in ACT. And kind of good news is SAT writing section, ACT English section. They call it different names, but the question types are identical. Difference, you get less time for ACT. And kind of surprising, so the ACT science, it's something that's people say is the biggest difference between SAT and ACT. Yes, if you're a STEM person, if you love science, if you love reading graphs and everything, okay, I guess it can help you. But the way this is designed, the way you want to go about this is actually quite similar to SAT reading. Filter, extract, and apply relevant information. That's how the questions are designed. They give you entire graphs, charts, weird looking lines and numbers. There's so many things to look at. In order to answer the question though, you're supposed to do that. Just get rid of all the irrelevant information and then pick out the number that's relevant to you and apply it to the situation. So that is why a lot of times the kids who are studying for ACT kind of get discouraged and challenged in the science section, even when you're good at science, because they try to approach it as just a science, but no, this is more of a reading thing. So there's that. Next, please. Who makes these tests? So yeah, it's an interesting question, right? Yes, I get it. It's not it. Like, why is this relevant? Why do we need to know this? Because I tried to get a job at a college board to make these questions, and I kind of got a glimpse of what kind of qualifications these people are looking for as the test makers. Next, please. Yeah, so obviously math teachers involved, English section, English teachers involved, but they also hire psychologists and educators. PhD in psychology and PhD in education. And they get involved in math sections and English sections. Isn't that kind of crazy? Yeah. So the takeaway from this is that they do care about how kids gonna think, how the test maker is gonna be thinking when they are reading certain kind of questions, written in certain way, right? I'll give you one example. I kind of thought about bringing up the example, but then of course, the moment I actually, pull up a, actual SAT questions or something, people are like, oh, no. I'm allergic. For example, I am because I've been doing this for so long, and then once I realize like all these people are involved, like now you're gonna start noticing. Let's say the question is 2 lines. The question is 2 lines long. Question is 2 lines long, and then the most important word to remember about the question is the first word of the second line. You see how it's going to work? Because when people read, they start rushing. And then when their eyes switch to the next sentence, they don't pay attention to the first word because they want to get to the end where there's a question mark. See, that's a you try it. You can try it. You can just pick up any paper, any like writing with many lines, and then just keep reading it on. see if you're gonna be remembering the first word of that line by the time you finish reading till the end of the line. You remember the whole thing about what it was asking in general, but not the first word. Also, I see all these trap answers. Of course, they're gonna give you like 4 multiple choice answers. One of them is correct answer. And then the one choice kids pick the most as a wrong answer. The most favorite, most attractive wrong answer is very oftentimes choice A, not C. A. Why? Because that's the first one normal psychology people would read. After reading the question, you're going to read the question A first. Who reads question D first and then C and B and A? A is the first one. So if I were, because wouldn't you do the same? If you're someone who wants to really test whether this person truly understood the material, you're going to put the trap answer as the first thing to attract, to attract the attention. So yeah, that's why it's not that it's crazy, That's why it's like, I'm so smart. I know I'm smart. How come my scores don't? Right. It's a little different test. It's different from what you think. Let's move on. Next, please. Yeah, so there we go. Hence the conclusion. Why is it? So next, please. So there are a couple of issues other than the fact that the test is designed such a way. Number one, in school, when you're doing well, you're getting A's, you actually have time. Of course, there's some kids who study just night before, that's all right. But still, it's hours. The material given, you already know what's going to be on the test exactly. And then you have however long time, right? You know exactly what's coming. You have like 6 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours if you want. But standardized test, if you're looking at the reading passage, you have never read this before. And you barely have minutes to understand everything, understand the intention of the author, all these techniques going on. And then all the reading the questions and understanding the connotations of the answer choices. You got minutes, can't go back. You don't have time. Number two, grammar section wise. In school, you don't get points taken off all over only because your comma was a little off or semicolon was used as a colon. That's okay. I mean, you lose a point or two, but you can still pull up an A. But in standardized test, even when it looks like, so not only you need to know these grammar rules, because they're actually testing you on that, which you have not covered since elementary school for most cases. Even the questions you think is about comma, they're kind of disguising themselves as grammar. It's actually reading related. So there's that kind of trick in writing. In math section in school, they test what you know, said. But in standardized test, to be fair, because not everyone in America takes calculus. As much as everyone in Ridgewood is most likely going to take up to pre-calculus, that's not standardized. Some schools, most kids take up to algebra 2 barely by the time they're senior. To be fair, they don't ask that high. Instead, they're trying to test, did you read the question? We asked for volume. I'm going to give you an answer choice that pertains to area. You get it wrong, you look at it, you tell yourself, oh no, I made a mistake. I will not make the mistakes next time. No, you need to be aware that the traps are real. That's not your mistakes. If the test maker did it intentionally. Next, please. Yep, so that's all I have, what I have for you. If you have other questions, please reach out to us and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Harrison. Thank you for your presentation. All right, again, my name is Justin Kim. I'm a director of Noble Class Academy. So today I'm going to be talking about the first time, SAT is going to be done digitally. So I'm going to talk about the new digital SAT test. So the question is, what is the new digital SAT test? Some of you might have already heard of this, probably did not know the details, and some parents probably this is totally new. So I'm just gonna simply put in this way. Students will take the SAT test on a computer or a tablet PC. So after a certain time, it is no longer be a paper-based test. Okay, so what are the changes then? So the biggest change is the fact that it's going to be like, a digital platform. So as I just mentioned, students are able to use a laptop, both Windows or Mac, any type of tablet PCs or even certain Chromebooks. So technically, student can bring their own device of their choice. If you don't have any device to bring in, you can borrow one. So College Board is working with the schools. So schools will have some kind of a devices ready for rental. Obviously, it looks like, you have to just make a reservation in advance. So first come, first serve basis for sure. So in case you don't have any device to bring in, you have an option to borrow one at the testing site. So once you bring your own laptop or MacBook, you are required to install a software on the computer so that you can take the test using the computer that you're familiar with in the testing site. So it's not going to be like an in-home test yet. And I don't think College Board has any plan to making it as an in-home test because they have a bad experience 2 years ago when they administer in-home AP exam during the pandemic. So it's going to be strictly, digital test done on the testing site. So students are still signing up for the test as they were doing now, and they're going to bring their devices and then they're going to take it in the testing sites. All right. Second, there's going to be built-in timer and a calculator on the software. So students do not have to bring their calculator nor a watch, because sometimes students forget to bring their calculator, so they end up taking the math section, calculator section without a calculator, or sometimes they forget to charging their calculator, or they didn't bring a watch, but there happened to be in a classroom where there's no working clock. So sometimes some students fail to manage time because they did not know the passage of time, but it's not going to be the case anymore because this new software, has built-in timer and a calculator. So it's going to be more convenient for students because they don't have to bring paper and pencil anymore, but rather they're going to bring their own device. Let me go into a little further details. Duration. So current SAT will take 3 hours to complete, but the new digital test is going to be reduced to 2 hours. So it's 1 hour shorter. That's one of the biggest advantages, and students really love about this change. Section composition. So for the current SAT test, there are going to be 4 sections: reading, writing as in grammar and language section, because the essay option has been eliminated since 2021. So students do not have to write an essay for the SAT. And there are 2 math sections, one for the non-calculator and the other one is calculator allowed sections. So there's going to be 4 sections in total. On the new digital SAT, there's going to be only 2 sections, English and math sections. In each section, there's going to be 2 modules. A module is a set of questions. So I'm going to talk about the details momentarily. So students will going through 4 different modules, 2 modules per section. Format. So for the current SAT test, if students are taking the same day in the same region, they'll be given exactly the same test. So meaning students around you will happen to have exactly the same paper copy that you have. So, when you're moving to the sections, your, fellow test takers are also taking exactly the same test. However, the new digital SAT test is going to be unique and adaptive. I'm just going to also explain this in the next slide. So each test taker will be given very unique sets of questions. So test takers around you will probably going through different sets of questions as yours, right? So there's no way that you can even try cheating because there's no reason you have to do it because each and everybody will be given different sets of questions. Then I just mentioned that this test is going to be adaptive, right? So the idea is this. So once you complete your first module, first set of questions, based on your performance, the difficulty level of the next module will be determined. For example, if you did well on the first module, you're going to be given a little harder module with the difficult questions. And if you did poorly on the first module, then you're going to be given relatively easier set of questions. But then you feel like, oh, okay, then how can it be fair? Because if you end up going through different questions, and obviously you're likely to make mistakes or getting more incorrect questions. So in order to match up this validity and fairness of the test, if you happen to have a harder module 2, then you're going to be having like a more generous curve, meaning for the same number of incorrect questions, you're going to lose fewer points. So let's say that if you ended up getting 2 questions wrong on the harder module, then you're going to lose, say, like a 50 points only. But if you happen to have an easier module number 2, and if you end up having same number of incorrect questions, you could lose 70 or even 80%. So it's not only the good thing that you happen to have like an easier module, because if you make mistakes, you're going to be penalized more further down. Okay, so this is the idea of adaptive test. All right, contents. So as Harrison just explained, in the English sections, students will be given long passages, and each passage comes with like somewhere between 10 and 11 questions. So students are supposed to read long passage within a certain amount of time, and they are supposed to also solve subsequent questions. But for the new SAT test, this is the most striking difference between the older version and digital version. So each question comes with a single passage or even a sentence. So each passage will be very short. And like I said, it could be just a sentence. That means students will be given very limited information to deal with the same level of advanced, English questions. So this is one of the most striking differences that I can say. Math-wise, current SAT test has 2 sections, as I just mentioned: short calculator allowed section, short non-calculator section, and long calculator allowed sections. But for new SAT, there's only one math sections, and there's going to be 2 modules, just like I said. And calculator is allowed for the entire section. So students, they are able to use calculator throughout the section over 2 modules. So this is one of the big differences for the new digital SAT. And number of questions. And for the current SAT, students will be going through 96 English questions and 15 math questions. For the digital SAT, students obviously will have much fewer questions, 54 questions in English and 44 questions in math sections. Then obviously they're going to be completing the entire section in a few hours. That's why it can be done in 2 hours. And the total score, the perfect score, will remain the same. So 1600 and 800 even, they put together 1600. And also one of the big changes will be the fact that students will get back to their results much shorter turnaround. So currently students are expecting their score to be released in 2 weeks, but based on College Board information, students, once they start taking this digital test, they're going to be able to get their score back in a few days. So this is going to be a huge advantage for senior students who are taking the test in October, because they're trying to submit their SAT score to meet early action, early decision deadline. Since they're taking the first week of October, they can get their results back in the following week. So before they submit their score, they could check, they can get the score back, and they have enough time to, make a decision whether to send the score or not. And so they don't have to rush, sending the scores and anxious about, meeting the deadline. Okay, then you might wonder, when will my child take this new digital SAT test? Let me show you the timeline. So there are 3 columns. The first column represents time schedule for the international students. So at this point, international students do not have any option but to take the digital test, because starting next March, there's going to be no option for paper-based test anymore. So international students will start taking the official SAT on a digital platform starting next year. The mid column represents time schedule for the PSAT. So still students will take the paper-based test for the April PSAT test, if that's available in the region. And then starting fall of 2023, even PSAT is going to be digital. So if you look at the right column that represents the SAT schedule for the US students in the United States. So throughout this the year 2023, students still are able to take the paper-based test, and starting 2024, March of 2024, again, students in the United States do not have an option to go back to paper-based option. So our students will get to take this first time digital test 2023 fall for the PSAT 10 and PSAT 11. Okay, then you might wonder, what do all the details mean for my child? This is another representation of the timetable that I just showed you in 2 slides before. So if you look at current 10th and 9th grade, so when they become 11th grade or 10th grade respectively in the fall of 2023, they're going to get to take this digital SAT for PSAT 11 and PSAT 10. But please note, throughout year 2023, still paper-based tests are available. So based on your child's academic standing and kind of testing plan, you could just start establishing some study plans and official test taking schedule as well. So let me show you how this will work. So I would like to try to categorize it 4 different student body. First, 10th grader who are currently taking Algebra 2 or more advanced math courses like pre-calculus and math analysis, even calculus AB. So math-wise, they're more than capable of taking this SAT test for both English and math. So they can probably start SAT prep of a kind in the 2023 spring with the intention to target the June test. And once they can successfully handle it, or even they take the June test, they might want to continue this SAT prep throughout the summer, again, target the August test. So they can, hopefully accomplish the goal they want over these 2 tests, because, a lot of schools still have like score policy, score choice policy or super score per se. If needed, they can continue the SAT prep. But again, once the year 2024 hits, students have no option but to go for like a digital test, or you have to consider ACT as a standardized testing option. What if your child is currently taking only Algebra 1 or geometry? As just Harrison explains, taking like a lower level of math doesn't necessarily mean that you're not capable of handling SAT math. But I want to be careful about this, because some students still need to build the fundamental skills across the different subjects. So I would rather recommend students consider improving overall English proficiency by taking some sort of high school level of English class, some fundamental level of SAT English class. And then during the 2023 summer, they probably want to go through some intense program where they're going to be better prepared towards the August official test. And then they can continue taking it while this paper-based tests are still available. And again, same thing, starting 2024, they can only take the digital test, or ACT could be still an option. How about 9th graders? 9th graders who are currently taking geometry, Algebra 2, even more advanced topics, okay, they can follow the same schedule for certain sophomore students. They can possibly target the June test by taking some SAT prep course in the spring, and they can continue this test prep schedule throughout the year 2023. And then again, they can think about digital format when it comes to 2024 spring. However, 9th graders who are currently taking only Algebra 1, who has never taken any advanced math like geometry, Algebra 2, still they don't have to rush towards this SAT prep. But again, it is always time consuming to start building up some fundamental solid foundation in English overall. So I will still recommend these ninth graders will start considering taking some sort of high school level of English class or some fundamental SAT English class, because they might have a chance to target the August test by going through some intense course during 2023 summer. Okay, so some of you might wonder, I mean, why my child is only 9th graders? Why does he or does she bother, think about SAT prep? They just started their high school years. There are reasons why. Although College Board say that digital test is going to has a lot of advantages and good things. For example, it's going to be more flexible. So they're thinking about having options for like weekday testing, so students are able to take the test from their own school in the afternoon hours, or even Saturday, probably there's a chance they can, start having some like an afternoon testing schedule, because it's only shorter 2-hour test and it's going to be done on computer. So it doesn't necessarily have to be scheduled in the morning, because a lot of students find out taking this kind of intense test 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning is obviously not a good effective way of just, getting their performance evaluated. And also College Board claims that this is going to be much more effective in many different ways. I agree with this kind of statement to a certain extent. As I just explained today, students are not going to waste time reading long, difficult passages. So everything's going to be very pinpoint. And also they're going to be able to get their score back in a very, relatively shorter time. So it's going to be effective and advantageous for many cases. And also this new test is going to be like adaptive and a unique version to each and every test taker. So it's going to be much more secure, because it looks like it's really impossible to think of any way of doing some sort of cheating, because there's no point of looking at someone else's test, because their version might be different than mine. And overall, this new digital test seems like a much more student friendly, because beta testing has already been done internationally, even in the United States. Based on the feedback from comments from those students, they were really comfortable taking this test, and they don't have any issues completing this digital test in time. So they felt it's much more comfortable. So it looks like the digital format would be a little more student friendly. Then what's the better? Because it sounds like it might be easier than the paper-based test. I would have to say that still we don't have enough data to determine this, but we have to think about two different aspects. First, it's adaptive format, right? Like I just explained today, once you, based on your performance on the first module, your next module will be determined. So your test taking experience will not be that harsh, because you're going through the test based on your academic level. But is it all good things? Not necessarily. Like I said, for the same mistakes, if you happen to go through like an easier module, there's a good chance that you're going to be penalized further. So there's always pros and cons, right? And then we have to think about decision on test formats and testing schedule. So we have to think about when my child start taking some sort of SAT prep, and when will he or she will have to take the first and second official SAT tests. Well, like I said, there are still certain uncertainty about this new digital test. When College Board changed test format from 2400 score to 1600 about 6 years ago, there were a lot of hiccups and issues throughout this transition. So a lot of students had a hard time getting like a realistic and good scores, because College Board, even though they're going to be trying to match the difficulty level across the different tests, but still they don't have enough data, because only a very small number of students have taken this test so far. Once this international digital test has starting being administered, probably have a better data, and we're going to see how things will turn out. But until then, we still have to be careful about choosing digital test as an option. And for the current sophomore students especially, I strongly recommend the current sophomore students seriously consider taking SAT official tests throughout year 2023, simply because there are much more test prep options available for students, because even educators like ourselves, we have much more resources available for students, and we have a lot of know-hows, so we can see how we can generate the results. So we strongly recommend students start considering taking the paper-based current SAT version while it lasts, okay? All right, I mean, today we were not able to accommodate Q&A session, unfortunately, but I'm sure that parents will have a lot of questions, and each and every student has a very unique situation and context to consider. So I strongly recommend parents, students to find a way to get some sort of like a diagnostics and have a consultation. Especially current sophomore students, they must have received their PSAT score back recently. So that's one of the good benchmark points that we can just start from. So please contact us if you have any questions about the new digital SAT or current SAT or some other relevant academic issues. we are more than happy to just accommodate all your requests. So please contact us through this email, info@nobleclass.com. And also, we're hosting another webinar January next month. It's going to be about college admissions. We're going to go over some fundamentals, some interesting facts about the college admissions. So I hope to meet all of you during our next webinar. I think I'm done.
Thank you, Justin and Harrison, for your presentation this evening. Really appreciate all the hard work you guys put into this and informing our community about the changes and about standardized testing. Again, the webinar has been recorded. I will follow up with all the registrants with a copy of tonight's recording as well as your contact information. But for now, thank you again for joining us, and I hope everybody has a good night. See you guys later.
Good
Bye
night.
now.
Bye.